Hey guys, how's it going? Tong here. Today we're going to look at portable gaming consoles, and I'm not talking about all portable gaming consoles. I don't have any game thing like the Game Gear or Atari Lynx or something from the 90s. I'm going to talk about some obscure and some well-known consoles that I have mainly from the 2000s. The first one is the Cybiko Extreme, and I bet you haven't seen this one before. This is kind of an obscure gaming console made by a French company, I think, because it's got the accent, called Cybiko, and they made two devices. The first one was just the Cybiko, which I owned when I was a kid, and basically it's this computer thing. Had a monochrome display, pretty basic, but it does things like play games. You can install packages on it. You can download games for it, and they're like Pocket PC, Palm style games. But what do you expect? That's the early 2000s for you. It was okay for the time. I thought it was pretty cool. They had some multiplayer games, and if you had either cybercodes, you could communicate them wirelessly with chat. Of course, that didn't happen since these didn't sell very well, but they had the ability to communicate, and they also had an expansion port. You can plug in like a compact flash memory card or MP3 player accessories or something like that. Anyways, this is a Cybiko Extreme, which came out in 2002, the second version of the Cybiko. I never had this one when I was a kid, but this is what it looks like. It has the function buttons on top. I think they're for different shortcuts, programs, a calculator, chat client, what have you. It's all you can set it to the function buttons, and then you have your main buttons here, which are all kind of rubbery feeling. But you have escape menu, tab, enter, select, insert, delete, D-pad, on-off switch, and a very rubbery looking QWERTY keyboard here, which is very kind of difficult to type on. I think it kind of like hurts my fingers every time I type on this actually. And I didn't really like the Cybiko keyboard. The original one was even worse. It had these really tiny buttons that are really rubbery and would hurt your hand every time you type it. It's not exactly a ThinkPad or anything. The keyboard's not very good. Um, but yeah, this is the Cybiko. It's not very well known. It didn't sell very well. It had a good promise, but in the end, they couldn't compete with Pocket PCs or other PDAs. And but yeah, this is a gaming console, and if you have one that works, I've yet to test this one, but if you have one that works, I think you can still download it online somewhere. You can still get games, and there's still support for it, I believe, as it's got a cult following, I think. Okay, the next one I have from 2004, the Nokia N-gage, another not very popular gaming device. But here it is, the Nokia N-gage QD. This is the QD version. This is the second version of the device. What's unique about this device is that it's also a phone. So yeah, it doesn't look like much. Um, Actually, I believe this is the original. Okay, yeah, anyways, this is a phone and also a gaming console. So they made unique Nokia games for it. So yeah, you're thinking Nokia made a gaming console to compete with Sega and Nintendo and Sony at the time. So they actually sold N-gage games, and you put the cartridge in and you can play it. And the thing is, they weren't very good. There's not many good quality games for it. It can't really compete with Nintendo DS or Game Boy Advance, or the Sony PSP. So eventually Nokia gave up. But it was a interesting concept at the time. I mean, just look at the form factor of this phone. It looks like a taco almost. You hold it up, and then you just talk to you like this. You know, you talk to hold up to your head like this, and then talk to it. It's kind of silly looking, but it's very interesting. Um, and yeah, these days we can play games with our phones all the time, but back then, a gaming console that was also a phone was a novel concept, and the N-gage deserves some props for being original in that respect. I think this was one of the first dedicated phone game console hybrids that ever came out. Came out in 2004, I think. But yeah, Nokia N-gage, another piece of history. The next one is an even more obscure console, and this is very rare. This is called the Gizmondo, also a failure. It only sold 25,000 units, so you can imagine just how rare this is because of how much it failed. Um, Basically, it's by this kind of company Gizmondo, and eventually they went bankrupt. But the basics of this console is was pretty good. I think it had like a lot of advanced features at the time: Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, it had a web browser, MP3 player, everything. So actually had pretty good functionality at the time, but just couldn't get enough support. And yeah, it couldn't get enough support and not enough reviews, and eventually it just flopped. As you can see, this is the disc, game disc here. Uh, Charging port, headphone port, mic, mini USB here, and it's actually supposed to be like a multimedia kind of a device. As this reminds me kind of like a 3DO but in portable form, like how much the 3DO failed, um, how much it failed, but it failed to live up to its promises. But at the same time, I think it doesn't deserve the amount of hate it gets. Like I think Gizmondo is often on the top 10 worst consoles of all time, but I don't think it's really that bad. Functionality, it's actually pretty good, and unfortunately, I think it gets a bad rap because of the what happened with the company and all the scandals that happened. But the gaming console is actually not as bad as people think. But massive failure, agreed. That's it. That is a Gizmondo from 2005. Hey guys, so today I just want to show you some more handhelds and phones that maybe you guys haven't heard of or seen much of before. This one is the Tapwave Zodiac from the early 2000s. It's a handheld video game console running Palm OS, so that's pretty interesting. That it's a console that actually runs Palm OS. So yeah, it's from 2003. It's got these equivalent of X, Y, A, B buttons on modern video game handhelds. So that's over there. You got your analog stick, some button here, don't know what it does. Home button, power button right here. For some reason I can't get many of these to boot up, which is too bad. So really would like to show you guys the interface and stuff. Bluetooth button, which is interesting. That wasn't very common back then in the early 2000s. And cartridge slot up here. It seems to be two of them, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, Tapwave Zodiac, pretty interesting system right here. I wish I can show you guys some games. But yeah, it's very similar to some of the other obscure handhelds that I've reviewed, like the Gizmondo, little alien head looking device from 2005, and the Nokia N-gage, and the Cybiko Extreme from the early 2000s. So yeah, obviously these guys all failed because they're obscure now, and they were dominated by the Nintendo DS and PSP back in the early 2000s, so it's unfortunately the way it goes. But now I have these as part of gaming history. We do have these devices: Cybiko Extreme, Gizmondo, Nokia N-gage, and the Tapwave Zodiac. If only I can get one of these to work. I can't get any of them to work actually, which is unfortunate, because they're actually not that bad. Especially the Cybiko. I have fond memories of using the Cybiko back in the day, and for the time it was actually not very bad at all. Okay, anyways, moving on from video game consoles to phones. The next one is a more popular gaming console, but still not as popular as Nintendo or Sony. This is the Nvidia Shield. It came out in 2013, so now I'm getting into more modern consoles. And this is like a controller, but it's actually a gaming. It's meant for gaming, and it's a tablet. It's a 5-inch tablet that's also a controller. It's meant for gaming. I've compared this to my WikiPad before, and it's similar to WikiPad, yet different because the screen is smaller and it's more portable in a way, because the WikiPad was just huge. It was a 7-inch tablet, and you had to attach this massive controller dock to it. But the benefit was that you could separate the tablet from the controller dock, right? Well, with the Shield, it's permanently attached. The tablet is permanently attached to the controller. But with that, you have a pretty powerful processor. You have NVIDIA. This is a Tegra 4 processor, I think. And they have the new versions of the Shield that come out now. But anyways, this is the Tegra 4 processor. And yeah, it plays all these emulated games just fine. You have all these controls for you, And if you ever want to do Android gaming of any kind, the NVIDIA Shield is pretty good for that. That's what it's meant to be, what it's meant for. This console was built mainly to do Android gaming on, and yeah, there you go. Yeah, HDMI, mini HDMI slot, SD card slot, micro USB, headphone jack, shoulder buttons, trigger buttons, and your standard Xbox 360 style controller layout. And yeah, that's the NVIDIA Shield Portable from 2015. Next, we have the Sony PS Vita, which some might also consider a failure as well. But that's just because in comparison to the PSP and other gaming consoles and to the 3DS, it doesn't sell as well. But I think Sony made a good effort. I made a review on the Sony PS Vita already, and I talked about how this console is really underrated, and it has a lot of decent games. It has a lot of Japanese RPGs. It has a lot of good indie games, and it's quite powerful. It has a great screen. It's quite powerful compared to the 3DS, but unfortunately, it doesn't get enough support from developers, and if it doesn't get enough support from developers, no one's going to buy it, right? And that's the problem here. Is that Sony makes good devices, but people just don't buy it, and that's unfortunate. I think the PS Vita is a good device. So your volume buttons and shoulder button, power button, nice webcam and touch strip on the back. Uh, the screen, this is the slim version, so it's the LCD. It's not as good as the OLED from the first version, but it's there. I still think it's a good screen. And the webcam, you can do Skype, you can do YouTube and Facebook on this also. Stereo speakers, PlayStation button here in select and start, as well as the mini micro USB charging slot in the PS Vita proprietary memory cards in the game slot up here. So yeah, this is Sony PS Vita, which I think is underrated and deserves more love. Definitely more powerful than 3DS. But as we all know, power doesn't really do much compared to the amount of good library support it has, compared to the number of games it has. And that's where Nintendo basically wins with the 3DS. So this is the new 3DS that came out this year, 2015. This is the newest of the gaming consoles that I have. And I never actually owned a Nintendo portable console before. I never had a Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, DS. I never had any of those. This is the first one I have. But I really find it interesting, just because 3DS is very interesting because the way they do 3D, the stereoscopic 3D, auto stereoscopic 3D, means that you don't need to have glasses and it automatically tracks your face. So whatever way you look, the 3D will be consistently there. And that's one of the new improvements with the new 3DS. They made it like that so that the 3D is improved. You can you can choose to turn it off to get rid of the 3D or not, or turn it on. But I think for the most part it works very well, and I'm very intrigued by the way that this works, because I've never seen this really utilized in other devices before. It seems that the only auto stereoscopic 3D device I've seen is the 3DS, and I wonder why other companies haven't used it, but it seems the 3DS does it to great effect. And yeah, this is the Monster Hunter version, Monster Hunter for Ultimate version, and the amount of games for this is pretty good. I think Nintendo's strength has always been that Nintendo makes great games, first-party games. It has the lack of support from third-party, although that's getting better with the 3DS. Obviously, it's getting better games than the Vita right now. So it's getting better at that, but the quality of the games has always sold Nintendo's consoles. It's never been the hardware. As with the PS Vita, so Sony has always made great hardware, but the amount of support they get with the software they get, it has not beaten Nintendo. Nintendo's software and games library is what attracts people to it, like Pokemon and Mario, and this is Harvest Moon, Zelda, Persona. All these great support games and franchises basically hold up Nintendo. And now they have Monster Hunter as well. Monster Hunter used to be a Sony exclusive. Now it's Nintendo exclusive, and so was Persona. Now turned to Nintendo exclusive. So I applaud Nintendo for their ability to get all the support now, which makes them beat Sony basically. So now there's no doubt that the 3DS is doing much better. Yeah, I can watch YouTube on this, but it's not going to be the same as on the Sony PS Vita screen. The Vita screen is better by far. The hardware is better on the Vita by far. But Nintendo has some pretty interesting technologies. Yeah, like the auto stereoscopic 3D, um, and all the game support that it has. I think the 3DS, that's what makes the 3DS popular. Yeah, it has the new 3DS. If you guys haven't watched any reviews yet, it has a webcam right here that tracks your movement and gets you the 3D, gets you that 3D appearance automatically, which is pretty magical to me. This new button nub, which can be used for other game actions in games. You have your standard SNES button look like controls. Analog stick here, D-pad here, start select, home button here. Takes you back to home. And the game slot, although I always get my games downloaded. Headphones, a stylus, which I don't really use, but I guess you can use on some drawing games or some sketch apps. Power button, and then you have the volume and 3D sliders and the proprietary charging port, which you had to buy separately, unfortunately. And then 2 shoulder buttons on each side here. And yeah, that's the Nintendo new 3DS. I don't know why they call it that, but the new 3DS, Sony PS Vita, and then we have the more obscure gaming consoles, as well as the NVIDIA Shield, which is in a league of its own. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions about these gaming consoles. I'll try to answer them for you. And thanks for watching this video.